little bit weird for this list because when you play her, she doesn't always feel overloaded because it's her passive of giving her so much sustain and the super strong passive that gives her tenacity up to as much as 40% that truly makes her overloaded. And because of her kit, she's been super strong for a really long time and has had loads of success at the competitive level. Next up at number 9, it's Nidalee. Any champion that has 2 forms is bound to have an overloaded skill set simply due to the fact that they technically have 7 abilities, and Nidalee is no exception. Her mobility shines out a lot since it can be both targeted and directional, as well as, let's not forget, her movement speed bonus from her passive, in addition to her traps that can be a great tool for vision, as well as her heal and the attack speed it gives, and percent missing health damage on her takedown, as well as her extremely high range and solid poke, and you're left with a pretty crazy champion. Unlike Aurelia, due to Nidalee's 2 forms giving her different skill sets, when you play her, she's a really good example of a champion that really feels overloaded, and pretty much all champions that have 2 forms feel like this too, since there's just so much to do in their kits, and Nidalee's been a fairly dominant champion over the years and has been successful for just about as long as I can remember. And at number 8, we have Rek'Sai. Ever since Rek'Sai was released, she's been a super strong jungle champion, and it's mostly due to the large amount of tools that her kit has to succeed. With an area of effect knockup, strong AoE damage for clearing camps, sustain through her Fury Bar, true damage, passive attack speed, a global teleport, and super good mobility and map movements, and let's not forget, a passive that gives her vision of all enemies near her in a huge radius, and it's no wonder that Rek'Sai has remained one of the strongest jungle picks in the game, and has dominated the meta quite effectively ever since her release. Now, Rek'Sai is actually kind of similar to Aurelia, and while she doesn't really feel super overloaded when you play her, it's the passives and the options that her kit creates that really make her truly overloaded. Next up at number 7, we have Yasuo. He's probably a prime example of a kit that is extremely complicated to understand and to play, mostly due to his passive and his Steel Tempest, and that's generally because those skills are really overloaded and essentially really complicated. And in turn, this kind of makes him feel really overloaded too, in having a shield to absorb poke damage, reduced cooldown on his Steel Tempest based on attack speed, a high range area of effect knockup that can also be in an AoE melee radius, as well as his ultimate being what is essentially a second knockup, and some crazy powerful dashes, especially when he's near a creep wave, and a wall that blocks all projectiles, not to mention the fact that he doesn't have to use mana. And with all of those tools, Yasuo has typically been quite a frustrating champion to play against, and although he isn't as strong as he used to be, mainly due to a huge amount of nerfs, he's still played every once in a while and has had a lot of success, mainly due to the fact that he's so overloaded. And at number 6, we have Azir. With his passive to give him a ton of attack speed, a slow, 2 knockups in his kit, a shield, super high ranges, and the ability to manipulate where his auto attacks are coming from, and having auto attacks scaling off of AP, extremely high ranged mobility, and let's not forget the ability to create turrets, and you're left with a champion that has some actually really difficult mechanics because of how overloaded his kit is, but when played at the highest level, the true power due to the raw tools in his kit really shines through. He fell off a tiny bit from the meta when Riot nerfed his ranges super hard, but he's always been a champion that really feels like he has so much potential within his kit when you play him. And after giving some love to his ranges again, he's easily a top tier mid laner right now. Next at number 5, it's Gnar. Once again, we have a champion who has 2 forms, essentially giving them 7 abilities, and with 2 slows, an AoE knockback, a stun, percent maximum health damage that gives him movement speed, strong mobility, passive attack speed or tankiness depending on his form, as well as not having to use mana for all of this, and having a huge attack speed passive, and we're left with a champion that is quite difficult to play, but has some crazy tools to work with, which as a whole really makes him feel like an overloaded champion when you play him. Gnar has seen loads of success at the competitive level, and even with some nerfs, he's definitely still a really viable option right now. Taking home number 4, it's Lee Sin. And although he isn't really in the meta anymore due to a boatload of nerfs, Lee Sin completely defined the jungle meta for just about 2 solid years. And with insane mobility on 2 spells, percent missing health damage, lifesteal, and spell vamp, a great shield, and an AoE slow that also gives vision on the targets, and an area of effect knockup that is targeted, not to mention the fact that he doesn't use mana and his passive gives him huge attack speed and energy, as well as the fact that his cooldowns are quite low and we're left with quite an overloaded champion. His kit used to be a small amount more overloaded as well, with things like armor shred, and so the nerfs actually hurt him a decent amount, and when he was strong, he was like a crazy champion, and the fact that he essentially has 7 abilities as well certainly helps him a lot. And overall, his kit is extremely dynamic and gives you loads of versatility and tools to make plays in your game. And at number 3 we have Jace, and as a champion with 2 forms, it's no wonder that he has quite an overloaded kit. But with an area of effect movement speed gate, crazy high ranges and poke, the ability to get maximum attack speed with his W, a slow on his Q, a knockback and percent max health damage on his E, armor and magic shred, as well as bonus damage and movement speed whenever he changes forms, as well as a gap closer and mana regen in his melee form, and some extra tankiness, and it's no wonder that it took Riot pretty much a whole season of nerfing this guy for him to finally fall off the meta. He's finally starting to come back now a tiny bit that he's getting some buffs, but he's had more than his fair share of dominance in the competitive scene. Next up at number 2, it's one of the newest champions, Echo. And even though it's still close to his release, it's no secret that this guy's kit is pretty crazy. He's got a crazy area of effect stun that also gives him a great shield, a passive that slows and gives him movement speed, another slow on his time winder, percent missing health damage, a double dash on his phase drive, and another jump on his ultimate that heals him for a ton and makes him untargetable, and we're left with a pretty crazy champion on his release. Although the nerfs to his kit are definitely going to tone him down a little bit, his kit is still quite overloaded since he has so many tools and so much utility and versatility. And lastly, taking home the number 1 spot, we have Elise. And as another champion with 2 forms, giving her what is essentially 7 abilities, and her dominance throughout the years, it's no surprise that she takes the number 1 spot with her stun, sustain, percent max health damage, percent missing health damage, spiderlings that can be used to tank things and block skill shots, and overall give a ton of utility, passive attack speed, insanely high ranged mobility that gives her bonus damage and bonus healing, and not to mention the tankiness and move speed her spider form provides, and add into the fact all of that she has quite low cooldowns on her kit overall, and we're left with a champion that was once crazy powerful and has only fallen out of the meta due to an insane amount of nerfs. Elise's utility and versatility allowed her to dominate the metagame for a fairly long time until she pretty much just got nerfed into the ground. Her overloaded kit gave her the crazy tools she needed to shine through and succeed on pretty much any role in the game except for AD carry really, and so Elise takes my number 1 spot for the most overloaded kit in League of Legends. And that just about wraps it up. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button, as well as you can